It was supposed to be a fresh start, a quiet farmhouse in rural Maine, surrounded by nothing but acres of pine trees, winding dirt roads, and the occasional lonely neighbor. But for decades, the locals refused to go near it. They whispered about the house, about the strange shadows in its windows, and about the people who lived there and never came out again. The Johnson family didn't believe in ghost stories. Not yet. Not until the night they heard the scratching in the basement wall and realized they weren't alone. The Johnsons moved into the house in 1992. Mark, 34 years old, his wife, Emily, 29, and their 6-month-old daughter, Sarah. They had been struggling financially, and when the realtor offered them the old farmhouse at half its value, they thought they had stumbled onto a miracle. But miracles don't come without a cost, and the Johnsons were about to learn that some houses are cheap for a reason. The house had a history, a dark one. Back in 1973, nearly 20 years before the Johnsons arrived, a family of 5 lived here. Their names were the Millers: husband, wife, 3 children. They had lived in the farmhouse less than 6 months, before vanishing without a trace. The only sign they left behind was a dinner table still set for supper, food rotting on the plates. Police searched the house. The attic was sealed from the outside. The basement? Sealed with a brick wall. And no bodies were ever found. To this day, the Miller family remains listed as missing persons. When the Johnsons asked the realtor about the Millers, she brushed it off. That was a long time ago, she told them. People move on, families come and go. But that wasn't the truth, because in that small Maine town, everyone knew the Millers hadn't moved. Everyone knew something had taken them. From their very first night, the Johnsons noticed things. The floorboards creaked strangely, as if footsteps were echoing in the hallway, even when both of them were in the living room. The baby's room was always colder than the rest of the house, no matter how high they turned the thermostat. And at night, just after 3 in the morning, the family dog would scratch violently at the basement door, growling, barking, whining. But when Mark opened the door to check, there was nothing there, at least, nothing he could see. The Johnsons weren't the first to notice. Neighbors had their own stories. One claimed he heard children laughing in the house late at night, even though it had been empty for nearly 2 decades. Another swore that every time he drove past the farmhouse, he saw a woman standing in the upstairs window, staring. And then there was the old contractor, who in 1974 was hired to repair the basement foundation. He quit after 1 day, refused to go back. When asked why, he only said, "The wall isn't hollow," and he never explained what he meant. Would you have moved into this house, knowing its history? Or would you have run the other way? The Johnsons thought they could handle it. But as they would soon discover, some places don't let you leave. At first, they brushed it off. Old houses make noises, Emily told herself. The drafts, the creaks, the strange acoustics of hollow walls. But soon, the noises became more specific. One night, while Emily was rocking Sarah to sleep, she heard a whisper. At first, she thought it was the baby monitor picking up interference. But then, the whisper grew louder, and she realized it wasn't coming from the monitor. It was coming from the closet. She froze, clutching Sarah close, and then the whisper spoke again, clearer this time, a woman's voice. "He's still hungry," Emily screamed for Mark. He rushed in, finding the closet empty, the baby crying, and Emily pale with terror. But when he went to close the closet door, he noticed something strange. The inside handle there was worn down, as if someone had been scratching at it for years, trying to get out. The couple tried to rationalize it, lack of sleep, stress, maybe even hallucinations. But the house wasn't finished with them yet. Because the very next night, Mark woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, heavy. But when he opened the door, the hallway was empty. Except for the attic door. It was open, even though Mark had nailed it shut the week before. Determined to prove it was just his imagination, Mark climbed the attic ladder with a flashlight. Dust swirled in the air. Cobwebs stretched across every rafter. And in the far corner, something caught the light. A small, leather-bound book. A diary. And on the first page, in faded ink, was a name. Margaret Miller. Mark flipped through the pages. At first it was normal. Notes about farm life, her children, the weather. But then, the entries grew darker. The scratching is louder tonight. John says it's just rats, but I know better. The baby cries whenever the knocking starts. We can't leave. He won't let us leave. The final entry was just one line. The wall is breathing again. Mark slammed the diary shut, his heart pounding, because even though the words were written nearly 20 years earlier, he could still hear it, the scratching, coming from the basement below. The Johnsons tried to pretend it wasn't real. Mark hid the diary in a drawer. Emily avoided the nursery closet, but the house wasn't about to let them ignore it. Each night the activity grew stronger. Doors slammed in the middle of the night. Objects moved on their own. And Sarah, their 6-month-old, began staring into empty corners of the room and laughing. Emily asked what was funny. Sarah just pointed at the shadows, but no one was there. Then, the dreams began. Mark dreamed of the basement. Always the basement. He dreamed of a tunnel stretching deep into the earth, of hands clawing through dirt, of whispers calling his name. Every time he woke drenched in sweat, at exactly 3:12 a.m. Emily had her own dreams. A woman standing at the foot of the bed clutching a baby, her face pale, her mouth moving, but no words came out. And every morning after those dreams, Sarah would be sick, screaming until her voice went hoarse. Desperate, Emily called a local priest. He arrived the next day, holy water in hand. But as soon as he stepped onto the porch, he froze. He said he could feel something wrong. He walked through the rooms quietly, clutching his cross tighter with every step. Finally, he reached the basement door. He refused to go down. "There's something sealed there," he whispered. "And it wants out." That night, the Johnsons heard it again, the knocking. 3 slow knocks from behind the wall. But this time, there was something new. A voice, whispering, so faint, they almost didn't catch it. "Hungry?" Emily wanted to leave, but Mark refused. He said they couldn't afford to start over again. Besides, he told her, maybe it was all in their heads. Maybe they were just letting the house get to them. But deep down, he knew better. By the second week, the Johnsons had reached their breaking point. The dog barked at shadows until it lost its voice. The baby wouldn't sleep unless she was in their bed. And then, something happened that they couldn't explain away. One evening, Emily stepped into the kitchen to make tea. When she turned back, Sarah was gone. The crib was empty. Her heart dropped. She screamed for Mark. And then they heard it. The baby crying. Not upstairs. Not outside. From the basement. Mark sprinted to the basement door, flung it open, and nearly fell down the stairs. But the basement was empty. The crying echoed through the walls louder until it stopped. And then, a moment later, Sarah was back in her crib, sleeping peacefully, as if nothing had happened. Mark was shaken. He told Emily it was impossible, that Sarah had never left the crib, but he couldn't shake the image of that empty basement, or the feeling that someone or something was playing with them. After the investigator vanished, the Johnsons tried to continue life as normal. But every night, the disturbances grew worse, and always, they happened at the same time. 3:12 a.m. On a Tuesday morning, Emily woke to the baby monitor crackling. She leaned over and squinted at the tiny black and white screen. At first, Sarah was there, peacefully sleeping in her crib. But then, as Emily watched, a shadow drifted across the nursery. Not outside the window, not from a lamp, It was inside the room, and as it passed over the crib, the monitor flickered. For one frame, just one, Emily swore she saw someone crouched by the crib, someone pale, smiling, watching Sarah sleep. Emily screamed for Mark. He sprinted down the hallway, threw open the nursery door, but the room was empty. Sarah was sound asleep. The air was ice cold, and then the closet door creaked open on its own, slowly, inch by inch, empty. But on the inside of the door, carved deep into the wood, was a single word: hungry. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room, shotgun across his lap, waiting for something, anything to happen. At 3:12, the dog began barking, not at the nursery this time, at the basement. The door rattled, once, twice. Then, a deafening bang shook the walls. Plaster rained from the ceiling, and from behind the bricked-over basement wall came a sound no one could mistake: knocking. 3 slow knocks, followed by something dragging across stone. Then, scratching, louder, faster, desperate. Mark grabbed a flashlight and crept down the stairs. Emily begged him not to go, but he couldn't stop himself. When he reached the bottom step, the light revealed long cracks racing across the wall. And then, the plaster split. Dust poured out. A section of the wall crumbled away, leaving a narrow, jagged opening just wide enough to see through. Mark raised the flashlight. What he saw inside froze him in place. A tunnel stretched into the earth, narrow, damp, covered in claw marks, and at the end of it, crouched a figure. Its skin was pale, stretched tight across sharp bones. Its eyes reflected the light, glowing faintly. And its mouth twisted into an impossible smile. It tilted its head, and then it moved, fast, straight toward him. Mark stumbled back up the stairs, slamming the basement door behind him. Emily screamed as the wood buckled from the other side. The dog barked wildly, then yelped, silenced in an instant. The Johnsons grabbed their baby and ran for the car, but as they reached the front door, the lights went out. Every bulb. The house was silent, and then the basement door slowly creaked open, and from the shadows at the top of the stairs, something began to crawl. The Johnsons bolted for the front door, baby in Emily's arms. But before they could reach the porch, the figure dragged itself fully into the hallway. It was taller than any human should be, its limbs bent at unnatural angles, fingers scraping deep gouges into the hardwood floor. And when it opened its mouth, it didn't speak. It screamed. The walls shook, picture frames shattered. Every door in the house slammed shut at once. Mark aimed the shotgun and fired. The blast echoed through the house, wood splintering, dust exploding into the air. But when the smoke cleared, the hallway was empty. No blood, no body, just silence. Emily begged Mark to leave everything behind. "We can't stay here," she cried. "We have to go, now." They grabbed the car keys and ran for the driveway. But the car wouldn't start. No matter how many times Mark turned the key, the engine only sputtered and died. And then, from inside the house, the baby monitor clicked on. Static hissed through the speaker. And then, beneath it, a voice, not Sarah's, not human. "She's mine." Mark stormed back inside, rage overtaking fear. He screamed into the dark house, daring it to come out. "Take me instead, just leave my family alone." The lights flickered once, and then the sound came again. Knocking. 3 slow knocks. This time, not from the basement, from upstairs, from Sarah's room. Emily clutched Sarah close as Mark pushed open the nursery door. The room was freezing, breath hanging in the air. Every toy lay scattered across the floor. And in the crib lay another baby, identical to Sarah. Same pajamas, same face. One cried, the other only smiled. Emily screamed. Mark fired again, but the smiling baby dissolved into black smoke, swirling into the shadows of the room. The real Sarah wailed, her tiny hands clutching at Emily's shirt. And then, as suddenly as it began, the house went silent. The Johnsons didn't wait. They fled into the night, driving until the road disappeared behind them. When dawn finally broke, they pulled into the parking lot of a small diner, dazed and exhausted. But when Emily opened the back seat to check on Sarah, the car seat was empty. Sarah Johnson was never seen again. Mark and Emily told police everything, the noises, the shadows, the thing in the basement. But without evidence, without bodies, the case went nowhere. Authorities searched the farmhouse one final time. They found the bricked-over basement wall. They found the claw marks in the wood. They found the word "hungry" carved into the closet. But they never found Sarah, or the Millers, or anyone else who vanished in that house. The farmhouse still stands today. Locals say lights flicker in the windows at night, that you can hear a baby crying from the woods, that if you press your ear to the basement wall, you'll hear scratching, closer and closer, until it feels like it's coming from just the other side. Would you dare spend a night in the Johnsons' farmhouse? Do you believe Sarah was taken, or something else still lives beneath that house? Let me know what you think in the comments below.